Onion from the legal side, and he will be joining me as we look at the topic this afternoon. What is the topic? The topic is the reasons behind the state of emergency. Now, if you followed the news over the weekend, you must have come across the news report that the federal government stated its reasons for declaring a state of emergency at the Supreme Court when it argued against the PDP governors who had gone to court asking the Supreme Court to reinstate His Excellency Siminalayi Fubara as governor and to do away with the state of emergency. Now let's quickly take a look at the Nation newspaper with the caption, Rivers, governance collapse led to emergency rule, FG tells Supreme Court, published May the 11th, 2025. Now, I'm going to read a few paragraphs. The federal government has formally tabled before the Supreme Court its reason for imposing a state of emergency on Rivers State, citing collapse of governance and attacks on critical national economic infrastructure as key factors. It says it had no choice but to intervene. The government laid its position bare before the Apex Court yesterday in response to a suit filed by 11 states mostly controlled by the opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP. Remember, it was published yesterday, so when it said yesterday, it meant Saturday. Now, the states are Adamawa, Akwa Ibom, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Delta, Enugu, Osun, Oyo, Plateau, Taraba, and Zamfara states. The plaintiffs allege that the federal government erred in a law by imposing emergency rule on Rivers State. However, the federal government in disputing the plaintiffs' claims, in an affidavit by the Special Assistant to the President and the Federal Ministry of Justice, Mr. Taye Hussein Oloyede, the federal government alleged a very serious political crisis in Rivers State, which culminated in the declaration of a state of emergency by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on March the 15th, 2025. It said critical economic assets of the state, that's the first reason, critical economic assets of the state, including oil pipelines, became targets of vandalization, while militants openly threatened fire and brimstone against those they perceived as enemies of the governor, with the governor not doing anything. Besides, the FG said the state's crisis reached a point where the suspended governor Siminalayi Fubara demolished the State House of Assembly complex. It said the breakdown of law in the state was such that only 4 members of the State Assembly were sitting in Fubara's office. He said 27 other lawmakers were deprived the constitutional right to make laws for the state. He said the governor and lawmakers were trying to outdo one another in a series of suits on the political logjam in the state. The federal government said the governor was not able to present any appropriation bill to the House to be passed to access funds to run the state. It also confirmed classified security report that Fubara demolished the State House of Assembly complex. Oloyede in the affidavit said, I am a special assistant to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFRO. By reason of that, I have been working in close contact with the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, the first defendant in the case. Further, by reason as the same position, I know the facts of this case, and I have the authority of the President and Chief Akin Olujimi, CON, counsel to the first defendant to swear to these counter affidavits. Anyways, he goes on and on and on and on, but we now have a glimpse of what the reasons are. For those of you who've been arguing over and over and over and over again as to whether the state of emergency is legal or not legal, now let's get to the bone of contention. My name is Kaladako Rubatibu, and joining me to have this conversation is Living Jamala, is a Rivers-based legal practitioner, and it's good to have you once again in the studio. Living, should I say Happy New Year to you? It feels like that, right?
Canada, let me first also join in the crew of those welcoming you back.
Oh, really?
Whether you are visiting, you're passing by.
I'm a visiting lecturer at this point.
For the fact that Rivers and Nigerian people can still hear your voice in this program. It's a nice one.
All right, then. Living is good to have you as well.
Thank you very much.
Let's quickly get into matters arising. And the first thing I want to hear from you is, what do you make of the reasons given by the federal government? I know the matter is in court, so we're not going to get into the matter in itself. But we want to look at the reasons from your legal perspective. What do you make of the reasons? Is it good enough? A reason or set of reasons? First, militants were threatening fire and brimstone, like they say, and the governor was inactive. Secondly, the legislators and the executive arm of government were going tit for tat, and as a result, governments failed in the state. Something like that.
It's so difficult. On my way coming here, I was looking at how we're going to discuss this topic without looking at what is already before
the court.
You know, the essence of our discussion is to extract the reasons given by the Office of the Attorney General of Federation in defense of the suit as filed by the PDP-led control state. Now the Delta State government has filed an application to withdraw from that process.
Yeah.
Now, to answer that question, we have to take our minds back to Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution that provides for what gave Mr. President the powers to declare
state of emergency.
Whether that powers was exercised in compliance with that provision is what will allow the court to determine. Now, if you look at that provision very well, it talks about circumstances. There are certain things that must happen before the exercise of that powers is invoked. Now, it talks about where there is imminent war, where there is already war, either in Nigeria or a part thereof. So, if you juxtapose that with the reasons as adduced by the Defense Council for the federal government, is it in line with that provision? Is there a contemplation in that Section 305 that talks about where there is a breakdown of governance? Now, we're going to look into the...
I think for proper conversation, maybe we should open our legal Bible, which is the Constitution, and go to chapter... Section, not chapter. If it was the Bible, it would be chapter. But Section 305...
We also have chapters in the Constitution.
Okay. So the legal preacher is here in the studio. He's going to help us with that. So let's read from 305. My Constitution is far from me. Okay, yours is not here. So, where's my...
I open online. It's accessible.
So there is a Constitution very close, just by the corner. I didn't want to get up, so you could just help me with it, and then you could use it, and you could read for us. All right, so you've seen it. Okay, so let's open to Section 305, and so we can read and get it right, and everybody will be well educated on it.
Yes, Section 305 under Part 2 of the 1999 Constitution with the subheading Miscellaneous Provisions. Now, the side heading is Procedure for Proclamation of State of Emergency.
Okay.
Now, subsection 1, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the President may, by an instrument published in the official gazette of the government of the Federation, issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the Federation or any part thereof. 2, the President shall immediately after the proclamation transmit copies of the official gazette of the government of the Federation containing the proclamation, including details of the emergency, to the President of the Senate and House of Reps, as the case may be, to consider the situation and decide whether or not to pass the resolution approving the proclamation. 3, the President shall have the powers to issue in a state of emergency only when A, that is subsection 3A, the Federation is at war.
Okay.
B, the Federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement in a state of war.
So that's B, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll underline B. Go to C.
Yes, C part of it. There is actual breakdown of public order, public safety in the Federation or any part thereof, to the extent that as to require extraordinary measures as to restore peace and security.
That's A, B, C.
C. D.
Yeah.
We are going there.
Yeah.
There is a clear and present danger of actual breakdown of public order, public safety in the Federation or any part thereof, requiring extraordinary measures to avert the danger.
Okay. E now.
There is an occurrence or imminent danger or the occurrence of any disaster or natural calamity affecting the community or a section of the community of the Federation, there is any other public danger which the Constitution constitutes a threat to the existence of the Federation, or the Federation receives a request to so do in accordance with the provisions of subsection 4 of this section.
So read the last part again.
It doesn't work in this situation, in this scenario, because no one asked the president to do so.
Okay, or somebody. Okay,
yeah.
So now the
governor can. The governor of the state
true.
can actually ask Mr. President. I'm overwhelmed by the situation I found myself in my state. I think we need to declare this. During the time of COVID-19, that was when subsection 3, Article F was invoked.
Okay.
When Mr. President declared state of emergency in health, and also declared to the extent that we have executive orders closing down the states.
And only allowed for essential workers. Okay, now can I come in now? Now I can't remember exactly. I think BC talked about the possibility of danger.
Yes.
Then D danger, invasion talked about the danger in itself.
Yes.
So could we classify militancy or militant attacks on national assets that was going to bring in economic benefits to this country, not just the state at the time, as imminent danger, the possibility of danger? Can we argue that?
Kalada, I would like you to bring your mind back during the reigns of militancy in Rivers State.
Okay.
In fact, in the Niger Delta.
Yeah.
During
the early 2000s.
The early 2000s, where we have what was more or less an open war. Let's even just take ourselves back to the east. Let's take ourselves back to Borno, to some western state, or eastern state, sorry, where we have Boko Haram ravaging the state. In fact, some weeks ago, we talked about Benue State and some part of Plateau, where hundreds of Nigerian citizens were massacred without reprisal attacks from the security agencies. Now, if you look at those happenings, how many pipeline vandalisms happened during the said period that you can maybe look for a way to smuggle? And to what extent has the few actions been linked to a particular group, linked or in support of the governor?
Do you agree that if the pipelines, with the dire state we find ourselves economically, if the pipelines, maybe 3-4 more, had been blown at the time, that maybe the economy would have been grounded? Do you agree with that argument?
If there is evidence, substantially so, to link the activities of third parties, because we are talked about explosion, pipeline explosion. There was never a joint visit that said that explosion was as a result of third-party interference. It could be, failure from the pipeline itself. These pipelines were buried some tens of years ago.
Okay.
So who has looked into that? Yes, there was a video that went somehow that we saw some group of unguided miscreants threatening to blow some 1 or 2 pipeline, which has always been the issue of Niger Delta.
Do you think in hindsight that the governor should have responded to those unscrupulous people, like he called them?
I agree to some extent that the governor ought to, but it is the responsibility of the president of the federation entirely to protect those facilities.
Interesting.
That is why we have the NCDC. They have even contracted that surveillance to a private individual. So why not call those institutions of government and the private contractor that you have given that pipeline to protect? Ask questions. Why are you putting blame on someone who is not in charge of the protection of those pipelines?
Yeah, because it falls under the jurisdiction of the federal government.
It is a property of the federal government. Now, what's the name of this new act that when it was brought up, PIA gave some responsibilities, and I wrote an article challenging that position.
We'll get to PIA and what it says about communities taking responsibility. I guess that's where you're going to.
Exactly. All
right, but we'll be right back. Just stay tuned. It's the bottom of the hour. Yes, 4:30 p.m. The dial 92.3 Nigeria Info. My name, Kala Dakuru Batibor, and the conversation is on the reason or set of reasons given for the state of emergency in River State. Okay, so the question I want to ask you, by the way, you listening, is whether the state of emergency has had any good tidings it has brought. I think declared March the 15th. Executed March the 18th, but declared March the 15th. I think March the 18th was when there was the takeover.
No, that should be 20th, 22nd, 21st.
So, I might be misled by the newspapers then. But then again, I think I saw somewhere where it said March the 15th because what's it called now? The Nation reports that it was declared on March the 15th, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe would have to look at that. But that's not the bone of contention. Before the break, we were just talking about one of the reasons given, which is, we read section 305, and we saw A, B, C, D, E, and F, and we saw the different reasons as to why a state of emergency can be put in place. And there was a talk about the possibility of danger and, danger itself. And I was asking my guest, who, by the way, is living Jamala, a Port Harcourt-based legal practitioner, and he said, "See, while that may be the case, he made references to other places that are volatile, and then he said it's a federal government asset, it's a national asset, and it falls under the purview of the jurisdiction of the federal government, and so it should not be a state government responsibility to cater for its safety." And so that's a very good argument. I don't know if you agree. So I'm wondering if the federal government is punishing the state for its inability, that's the federal government's inability to protect its own facilities. Anyways, that's one point made by my guest, and I'll look into it when I open the phone lines. But you were mentioning the PIA, because the PIA also says that communities should take responsibilities when there is vandalization.
Now, the Petroleum Industry Act places some responsibilities on those who call themselves host communities,
okay,
to protect facilities within their domain.
Yeah. Now,
what is the punishment for not adhering to that provision of that PIA? Is that the percentage as approved?
That's 3%.
3%, yeah, that accrues the host community in the circumstance will elude you if something of sort.
So not a state of emergency.
It's not a state of emergency. It's not that it will be blamed on the governor. Why do you blame me for an activity that I have no right? Why do you then blame me for the consequences of failure to perform that act? When there is no right placed on me, there is no burden placed on me, there is no responsibility placed on me to protect, secure. If state government were given by whatever way in any provision that, yes, communities are within some particular locality, within the local government, within the state, and then they make up the country. Now, the responsibility starts from the community to the local government, because these communities, they receive 3% by way of what accrues the host community, and the local government receive revenue directly from the federal government. The state also receive revenue from federal government, and the almighty, is it 13%? Of
derivation
production, the states that produces the resources, natural resources, by oil and gas.
So 13% derivation.
Yes, that 13%. Now, if that is what is done, what is the consequences? Did you place a burden on them to protect those facilities? And if they refuse to perform those actions, what is the consequences of the failure of their action? It has nothing to. My only fear is that I've discussed in this studio that Supreme Court is a court of policy making. And so sometimes decisions of Supreme Court are not squarely based on law.
Okay, so they would help make policies that become law.
Yes, they help make policies that become law, like some of the ones we have seen in recent times, like the
local government,
which up to now is becoming a very difficult tax to implement. And also some of the cases of the River State that got to the Supreme Court. So if the Supreme Court looked at the circumstances, say a mere blowing of a mere pipeline, a mere report of pipeline blowing without statutory responsibilities of the institutions of government to visit and issue out a joint investigation report, then it is conclusive of an imminent danger in the state, then the Niger Delta state will be at risk of every pipeline
becoming a reason for a state of emergency.
Exactly.
But let's quickly run, because time is running faster. I mean, I missed the night show really, because I have got all the time at night. But let's come back to the other reason, which is the breakdown of governance in the state. There was no legislative arm, and the executive couldn't perform because there was no legislative arm. Because without the appropriation, after 6 months, according to the Constitution, had meant that state could not spend, means it was in a tight corner, and then there was the need for an emergency to save the people.
Kalada, let's save our time with the rhetorics of the defense.
I'm just reading what they said.
That's what I'm saying, it's still a rhetorics of the defense.
Okay.
Now, you and I will live in River State. You said they've already given us powers after making of laws, whether they allow the statutory period to elapse or not, this come back the other day to sit. You are here in this state that, yes, while some 3 or 4 men were sitting somewhere, 24, 25 men were sitting, and they claim to be the authentic River State House of Assembly.
Yeah, there was that debate, yeah.
Vetoing decisions of the executive. What forms a government? By the constitution, we have the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary.
Of course.
Now, I wouldn't know what, in the understanding of the government of the center, whether, as at the time the Supreme Court gave judgment, agreeing to the fact that yes, there was never a budget presentation, and therefore the expenses were never authorized, whether that alone amount to a collapse of government.
But look at it. This is what I think, and I'm in no way in the shoes of the government at the federal. But from my little understanding, they're saying, oh, Amewule no gree, Fubara no gree. And so if both no gree for each other, to say it in our parlance, local parlance, it means that there is no government. That's their argument. So Amewule refused to let the governor come submit the budget. The governor at some point did not recognize Amewule, and there was a tit for tat, the back and forth. And as a result, there was a breakdown in governance, and that's because if you say Canada, government is 3 arms of Canada, arms,
and these 3 arms were functioning.
They were saying it wasn't functioning.
Who approved the expenditures made by the Amewule-led faction of assembly since the hula balloon started the river?
But they were not being paid.
I'm coming.
But they were not being paid.
Who was functioning their sitting? Who was functioning?
I'm not aware of that.
Those are the questions we should ask. Was Amewule also spending unappropriated funds?
What if it was being sponsored?
By who? Under what law? Where was it appropriated? These are questions we should think aloud.
Interesting. Do you think the state of emergency has brought any respite to the state? I mean, there's been no argument as to who is the authentic speaker, when are we submitting the budget, local government election. There's been none of that. Do you think the respite is welcomed, so to say? Yes, there's the argument as to whether the state of emergency is legal or not. I mean, it's in court. It's being contested. While all of that is going on, do you think we've experienced some level of, like the governor said, I'm living in peace?
The governor spoke as a person.
Okay.
As an individual, not as a...
As one of the major actors, by the way, in all of this.
No, let's not
overblow it?
Overemphasize on that statement. He spoke as a person, and he returned to say, for the sake of the Rivers people, the office upon which I was elected, or I am elected to protect, I will. So he's
no. I'm not arguing. So live in Jamala. I'm not arguing as to whether the governor had the right to say what I'm saying. He meant. I'm just taking one part of it. He is in peace. He said, "Look at me. I'm fresh." That's the part. Any other part doesn't concern me at this point. I'm saying he's saying there's peace. So I'm asking, should we also see the respite as peaceful?
In every organization or in every setting in society, sometimes you see some natural disaster that makes us retire from work. True. This is one of those natural disasters that made Mr. Governor to have a little
retirement, something like that.
what is before ground.
I'm not justifying. I'm not asking you to justify.
The statement of Mr. Governor is not a justification of what is presently happening in Rivers.
But it could be.
I am telling you,
if one of the major actors has got peace of mind as a result of the state of emergency, shouldn't we all be welcoming the respite? And whether legal or illegal, that's the question.
The graveyard peace is never introduced in the family. No matter how peaceful the graveyard is, no one can ever wish that kind of peace be brought to his family.
Oh, I get you now. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. All right, let's now go to the phone lines. Living Jamala has got me really thinking about a couple of things on the show. And now I'm getting to understand, maybe I may have missed hard facts. Let's go to the phone lines. 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003, 0817-923-0007. Now, these are the call numbers. When your call is picked, tell us your name, your location, and then go straight to the contribution, right? Let's do it that way. Now, for WhatsApp, 0809-030-6416. And JJ says March the 18th was the declaration, swearing 19th, and arrived in Port Harcourt on the 20th. All right, thank you very much for that. And this one says, good evening, presenter and your guest. In its entirety, even though STEM laymen in the eyes of the law know that there is no reason or situation that necessitated the declaration of state of emergency other than to favor some persons with selfish interests. Now, imagine the rate of killings in the northeast and north central part of the country, which would have required the declaration of a state of emergency, but none of that was declared. Does it mean that the lives of those being killed in their numbers within the north are not important to the country? Or is it the presidency and the national assemblies afraid of declaring and supporting such declaration in the north? The executive arm, to some extent, is truncating democratic rule in Nigeria with the help of the judicial and legislative arms. Lives lost in the north do not matter, but crude oil in the Niger Delta matters. Is that what they mean? I don't know. 92.3 Nigeria Info. Good evening.
Yes.
Emeka from Elele, I can hear you. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Yes, my dear Oracle.
Kalada.
Good evening.
You're welcome.
My dear brother, there isn't any justification about that state of emergency. Is oil pipeline more important than human life? There is a lot of killings in northern part. Last month, they buried over 160 persons at a spot. Is oil is bigger than people's life? I'm just seeing it that the state capture against 2027. They want to ambush Kobara, and they have succeeded now. Ambushing him against 2027. What will he tell me that because they blow pipeline? Who blew the pipeline? Is there any evidence? Is there any funding from National Assembly? Is there any committee? Is Kobara in charge of pipeline? We have president that's in charge of chief commander in arms and police and everything. So we can't do this capture it. Everybody have condemned that. MPA have condemned that. Nigerian Labour Congress have condemned that. Civil society have condemned that. Opinion leaders have condemned that. Even Yoruba, where the President Tinubu came from, also can condemn that. Oh, it's a pure robbery.
All right. Thank you, Emeka from Elele says pure robbery, state capture. But let's listen to Chima from GRA. Chima, good evening. Welcome. Anybody home? Chima, are you there? All right, sorry about that. Lugaman from Eche. Lugaman, welcome on the show. Let's get talking, please. Kalada Korobatibo in the studio.
Kalada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I greet your guest.
All right.
Your guest has spoken like a sound lawyer.
Is it because he favors your argument that he's a sound lawyer now?
No, not my argument. He's telling us the truth.
Okay then.
He's telling us what is exactly the truth. Wherever you take it to, that is exactly what a good lawyer will tell you. Yes, I want to say that you'd ask us question that if the state of emergency is going down where we talk.
And that's not what I asked you. I said, has it brought some respite, some peace to the state? Say it as it is.
Brought any peace. Rather, what we are seeing, if not that our governor is a peaceful governor, if it were some persons, the position of the state administrator brought a very big problem to Rivers.
What problem? Okay, so I like to talk with facts, right? I don't think you've forgotten about that. When you say it brought a big problem, can you identify this big problem? So just not me, but a lot of Rivers, and maybe even the sole administrator can hear what the big problem he brought into the state is.
Yes, do you know that when he came, or when the president inaugurated him, he told him from complaint that he should come to Rivers and restore democratic institutions and also to make peace. Then what are we seeing? What are we seeing here is dismantling of democratic institutions.
Look, man. Don't go. Can I ask you a question? Do you think he has the power to bring about democratic rule to the state? I don't think he's empowered by the Constitution.
Thank you very much. That was what the president
so probably that's the reason why he cannot, because he's not empowered by the Constitution to bring about democracy. So scratch that.
Is it to dismantle all the all the democratic institutions? If we know that our governor is a peaceful governor, I keep on saying it, Rivers will have been boiling.
All right then.
Thank God for the peaceful nature of the governor and we too. But the way they are going. Okay, do you know that now? Look, how come the names of the sole administrators in some local government? Is that what the president asked him to do?
I mean, look, man. For every appointment, it's approved by the president. So I wonder if you're in the know that for every appointment that he makes, it comes from Abuja. So I think Federal Executive Council, FEC, they meet and they sit and they make an agreement as to who's to be appointed. So
you may force me to come in here, Canada.
You know where that appointment comes from.
All right. Look, man. Thank you very much. You've got to run. Time is not waiting. Lawson from Yenigua, welcome. Lawson, and all that thought. We'll get back to you. Yeah, Lawson.
Yes, thank you. Because in that section 305 that he was reading, that the lawyer leaving Jamala was reading. No, when it comes
Jamala.
to Jamala, you can predict what he will say.
Okay.
In that thing he was reading, in one of those subsections, he said, if a president suspects that there is danger, he can take extraordinary.
But that's what we read it. We talked about it.
I want him to explain the meaning of that extra. What are those extraordinary measures? Because the Constitution did not spell it out. That's
all right.
One. Two, the information that is available to the president is not available to living Jamala. So he may not understand. I don't know if you also want to ask you concerning that. In that Supreme Court judgment, Supreme Court was very clear that there was no governance in Rivers.
Okay, all right.
The governor was likened to that of a dictator.
All right.
This is also talk about that. Thank you.
All right, so 3 questions for you. I hope you've written it down. Then you add it to the. Let's listen to Chima.
If I answer Lawson, he said he knows where I'm coming from.
Oh, we'll get that. We'll get to that. Chima from GRA, quickly get to the point. Let's hear your views.
Good evening.
Yeah, welcome, Chima.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Kalada.
Yeah.
Kalada, I think nothing would have warranted state of emergency in Rivers State. It's all about state capital.
No, so while you want to argue in that direction, now let's focus on what they have said. They have said, hey, XYZ, XYZ. Does it make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense.
Why doesn't it make sense to you? Why doesn't it make sense to you?
How many corpses of dead body you pass on the road of Rivers State at that very time? How many? You understand? Now somebody blew pipeline and it has not been even verified the people who are responsible for this pipeline destruction. You go ahead and say the classes of emergency and you're giving reason. That is not a reason. It's not a cogent reason.
So are you saying the breakdown of governance is not a cogent reason where the Supreme Court has declared no governance?
Breakdown. Hello.
Yeah.
If there was a breakdown of government, there is a assembly. You understand?
Assembly is part of the government that has been broken down.
You understand? If you president feels that there was a breakdown of governance, you understand? The assembly should do the needful.
All right.
Which, of course, they have started commencing impeachment process.
All right.
It would have been better if that impeachment go through, and let's see what to come out of it.
So would you have wanted a state where, or a possibility where we were not able to pay salaries, there was a grounding of financial capacity of the state, and everybody was hungry, crying, governor, oh, president? Is that what you wanted? Is that what you would have wanted as related, or
what was the Supreme Court said that there was no governance?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which of course, because of some actions of the governor.
Yeah.
Now, when sole administrator came on board, what was the first thing the president did? Was to release the latest one and give to him.
And because it's now a state of emergency. It's a state of emergency. No, but that's what it is. It's a state. Chima, it's simple English. It's a state of emergency. State of emergency.
Right?
Yeah.
Look, Canada,
yeah.
It's glaring. There is no how we argue it here.
All right.
The fact remains that it was for a state capture.
All right.
New. Let me tell you something. Finally.
I've got to go, Chima. I'm sorry. But let's quickly, a lot of questions.
Yes.
The first one, democratic rule.
From
a lot of people have expectations for the sole administrator.
Yes.
Is it possible for him to do anything democratic or even bring about peace? It's like an appointee, if not an appointee. And so he takes orders from Abuja. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Ordinarily, should take orders from Mr. President.
Okay.
When Mr. President was making that proclamation, he said, I hereby appoint or nominate. Now it was ratified by the Senate. So Mr. President appointed him to act in Rivers State on his behalf.
Okay.
Now, how is it to make? He is not to make new laws.
Okay.
He's not to make new regulations.
Okay.
And where such regulations are needed, you come back to Abuja, fake will sit and ratify. Kalada, you are a journalist. I don't know if you do investigative journalism.
I try.
Have you ever, in all from March 18th, 20th, when he assumed in Rivers State, have you ever had any of the fake meetings?
He has attended.
No. The fake meeting he attended is the economic meeting of this federal government, where it's presided over by Mr. Vice President.
No, but he has
economic government.
No, that's the what's it called? I know the one you're talking about. NEC. That's NEC.
That's NEC. I'm talking about fake.
But I think he has attended.
You are thinking. Refer Nigerians.
I would have
refer
to
Rivers people.
So I've been away from politics.
Then
so don't put me on the spot.
Then don't think. Just tell us you don't have that information.
We don't have time.
Yes.
Does he have the power to or not?
He doesn't have the powers to restore democratic institutions.
Okay.
He doesn't. The Supreme Court judgment that Lawson is making reference to said yes, governance collapsed in Rivers State. The Supreme Court made a leeway. What is the way forward? Go back and represent.
But it was impossible.
It was not impossible.
They were doing ego fights.
Kalada.
Yeah.
In civil government, constitutional government, there's always a procedure to have things done.
Okay, so the procedure was not followed just yet.
The governor took some steps. Assembly said communications weren't proper.
So that was ego fight.
No, allow them play their game.
Okay.
Right. There is a process that ordinarily in law should mandate the House of Assembly members from receiving and acting upon that proposal.
Okay.
It doesn't lie within their powers to cherry pick.
Okay.
We don't want to see Mr. Governor. Mr. Governor, no.
Okay.
There is an order of mandamus that would have mandated them. That is the civil process. The law looks at. I'm not to make a grant for a declaration of an emergency. So the number of persons dying in Nigeria now. Anyways, is it a ground for anything of sorts?
Anyways, leaving Jamala, I've got to go. I'm trying to hurry you, but there's one more thing: extraordinary measures.
Lawson is someone who is clone to his own reasoning. With all due respect to him,
please do.
Yes, because he made some derogatory statement about my appearance. So but with all due respect, I will still accord him that respect. He's clone to his reasoning, and his reasoning is not far from what is so possible in Rivers State, that our youth have been so enslaved to political.
All right, leaving Jamala, I've got to go commercials. Thank you very much.
Stay with us. Nigeria Info.